Hola, hola. My name is Aoife, and I am a mind body coach. So I teach women how to heal themselves from chronic pain, chronic illness, anxiety, and depression using mind body techniques that work with the nervous system. And today we have a very special chica all the way from Mexico, Candia, Raquel, and Candia's whole vibe is bringing sensuality and pleasure essentially to the nervous system and back into people's lives, which I am totally aligned with. And I'm really excited to have you here so we can riff on this and how people can use techniques to actually build self-love, to regulate your nervous system, to heal relationships, so many things through bringing sensuality and pleasure back to the nervous system. So welcome, bienvenida.
Gracias. Thank you for having me, Aoife.
Great. So glad you're here. So I love what you do because I, as a woman, and I can't speak for men, so I'm sure they have their own journey with this in a different way. But certainly as a woman, I definitely grew up kind of like learning to like deny my own needs and like pleasure and vanity and these things were sins and shameful. Um, and I learned from like a lot of the women in the world around me to push, push, push and give, give, give. But I had no idea how to like ask and receive. So this created a very stressful environment, an internal environment, a system environment that was in stress in a very hyper masculine kind of like energy, if we want to use the masculine and feminine energies. And I was pushing and pushing and I was sick. I was really ill. I had chronic pain from a child, from the age of 4 years old. I had stomach problems, health issues, and then I had anxiety, depression, hormone issues, gynecological things. Like it was, the list is just endless. So I'm so delighted to have you here and just to talk about these issues and how can we bring more sensuality and pleasure when there's so much shame and it can feel very triggering and awkward to start to do these things for ourselves. So yeah.
Definitely, we are immersed in a toxic culture that sets overproductivity as a standard, no matter what the cost is. And this reflects in every aspect of human civilization, not only in our bodily experience, but also in our planetary body. Like we as a society, as a culture, don't care about devastating trees and forests and the wilderness in order to get a quick outcome and result. And this has at the core the idea of bypassing our intimate connection with nature, with our own nature, and with the interconnectivity and bounds with everything and everyone around us. So in a way, pleasure is rebellious. If we talk about pleasure and sensuality in the frame of culture. But the truth is that pleasure is our birthright, and even more, pleasure is our true nature, because pleasure is just another word for health. If you think about it, when you are healthy, when you're feeling good, like when we are not sick, when we are not depressed, like when we are okay, we are actually feeling good. Like we have pleasurable sensations in our body. And that is our baseline. That should be like naturally our baseline. But we take it for granted. Like we are healthy and that just feels normal. Health feels as normal as a clean house. You only notice that the house is dirty when the pile of dishes reaches to the ceiling and like there are cockroaches and everything around. But we don't notice a clean house, and that's why we in a culture don't value like this kind of subtle, nuanced, natural state that is health and that is pleasurable. So having this fact into account makes it easier to reframe our beliefs and preconceptions in regards to pleasure. So like thinking that pleasure as health is a sin, it makes no sense, because then what the opposite would be like going against life, going against nature. So I feel that is the first step to reframe and to deconstruct the patriarchal destructive culture against nature and against our own nature, and rethread our connection to ourselves and to the world, coming to an ultimate truth that is what you know that is because you feel it in your bone marrow. So Martha Graham said that the body doesn't lie, and that's a fact. I mean, you gotta be a really good actor to pretend that you're not feeling what you're feeling. So we have like our primary connection to truth through our sensation. I am talking about feelings, how you feel regarding to sensations, to physiological fleshly sensations, rather than emotions. Emotions have a different quality, but what is for sure is your felt sense, what is going on in your flesh. So the contrary to pleasure is pain. So in a way, same way that we cannot deny pleasure, we cannot deny pain. Like you wake up and then you rush to the bathroom and you hit your pinky toe in the bedside table, and you're gonna scream even if you don't want to. Like pain is like, it's a survival mechanism, and it has a certain physiology, a certain way that we know, because certain areas in the brain activate with pain. We have knee jerk, like our reflexes, the survival response. Like we are alive because of this wiring of pain. In the same way that we are here, evolutionarily speaking, because of the way that pleasure is wired in us, meaning that when something feels good, we know it's good for us. An example that we all been there. When we were babies and we took a bite of a rotten apple, we would spit it out immediately, like this apple is rotten, and like you don't even think about it. Like if you take a bite of something that is rotten, you're gonna maybe discreetly spit it out, because we know pain is a huge indicator. In the same way, when we take a bite of a ripe, juicy, fragrant, delicious, crunchy apple, this delight in the flavor informs ourselves that the fruit is at its most nutritious point. So it will be good for your body. So pleasure has also a specific wiring in the nervous system, a specific brain chemistry, a specific effect in our body. And that's why it's such an important way to assess your reality, to listen and to connect with your pleasure. So when you have this clarity, this physiological clarity in regards to pleasure, it's easier to deconstruct all those cultural lies that keeps us feeling bad about ourselves, especially shame and guilt, and even more in religious countries like Mexico, where I am from, that we have a huge Catholic Judeo-Christian background where women are slut shamed and for delighting in their fleshly pleasure, while at the same time men are like seen as champions by being like very promiscuous. So there's like a lot of double binding, like crazy making in our culture, and giving yourself permission to listen to your pleasure and delight in pleasure is actually a rebellious act, though it shouldn't be. It's actually an organic and natural act, just in the way that a cat or a horse or another mammal simply delights in being. So when we have like things in place, we may begin to restore our pleasure awareness. We can restore our connection to pleasure. And just to wrap up all these reply long answer, the main challenge to pleasure is numbness. We have
Yes.
become numb to
So,
our fleshly sensations because we also culturally want to shut down and inhibit pain. So we don't want to feel, but when we don't feel pain, we're not gonna feel pleasure either, because numbness like goes, it's an overall disconnection of the self. And also culturally is, it's not like promoted that we express our physical discomforts, and we often we don't listen to our body, neither pain or pleasure. And the only way that we listen to our body is when we are physically screaming in pain at the emergency room, where it's oftentimes too late. So sometimes we need those wake-up calls, but I hope that this conversation invites you, your audience, to wake up to the flesh, to the sensations, to honor what is going on in you as a truthful message. If you are, if you're feeling chronically ill, chronically in pain, or if you are delighting in your food, you're feeling good, well, that's your primary feedback of reality for survival. So practically pleasure is an awareness, fleshly awareness is a matter of life or death. So this is why pleasure is so important.
I love everything that you're sharing so much. I wanted to like jump in on so many points there. They're so good. So one thing you were saying, you were describing the thread, like actually using pleasure as a way back to you. And
Yeah.
it's so interesting because I think that the mind body healing journey of a lot of people, whatever you're healing, is it pain, anxiety, illness, all kinds of dis-ease and diagnoses in the body or the mind. Like just in my experience and through working with so many clients, it's a journey back to yourself.
Yes.
And through these broken beliefs and these cultural um you know beliefs and bad habits that we've been passing on. And we've become so numb to ourselves, like we just don't know ourselves. We're so far away from ourselves. Um, and I totally agree with you that finding your way back to you, it's so simple. It can be so simple. Like it's not easy because it's completely defiant. It's completely rebellious at this time, and it's like all, you know, we're humans, we're pack animals. We want to. That's why social norms and cultures can form so strong, because you know we don't want to be rejected from the pack. And I certainly have, when I've broken through all different kinds of belief systems, which I'm all on a lifelong journey of doing. There's been times where I have felt like really dysregulated and really scared about the consequences and the risks that I'm taking to relationships, family relationships, friendship relationships, like my maybe my, you know, my whole group of people that I rely on, through changing. But when you can build your own regulation and really get to know yourself through, like, and this is, I didn't come up with this word, and I will try to remember who it was and put it in the description. But a coach, a pleasure coach that I met years ago, or they said, they suggested microdosing pleasure. And still use this, like, you don't really need to be out there microdosing like all kinds of other things. Like the best thing you can microdose is pleasure. Like you use such a simple example like an apple, just like connecting in to that feeling of pleasure. And this is how you get to know yourself. Like how do you, like, I remember friends of mine actually in Australia, they were noticing like that their dog was like really like aroused every time he got fed. And it was like we were laughing because we were just recognizing that like arousal is how you, like, just, you know what you like. It doesn't have to be all about sex.
Yes.
It's like you can just be aroused by anything. Actually, one of my clients said she was aroused by stocks or finances, managing finances or something, right? And it's like how you really get to know what you like and what you don't like you shared. And I also love that you use an example of children or babies, because you know, like there's no better example of like a being that hasn't got these programs yet, and they know their boundaries, and they know what they like, they know what they don't like. And when I meet my clients who mostly have some kind of dis-ease, um they are so disconnected, and I know because I was too, but they're so disconnected from what they know and love. Like what do you love to do? What are your passions and interests? Like what do you love to taste? You know, they really are disconnected from these things. And like you shared, like there's so many reasons for that, like the guilt and the shame and the people pleasing and the programming. Like we just become so numb. We're just like these, what, we're on autopilot, just like walking through life, and we don't know how dysregulating that is the nervous system. So how do you find your way back to you? I love how you kind of set the path. You're like, well, through pleasure, finding your pleasures, your little bits of pleasures throughout the day. I love it.
Yeah, definitely. So pleasure is the baseline. Pleasure is just another word for health. And from there we go to sensuality, that I like to define as broadly as sensing pleasure through the senses and moving in a way that is completely free from inhibition and full of self-expression. So you receive the the pleasure from the apple or whatever, like a fragrance or your proprioception, how you feel inwardly, or the touch, like the clothes brushing your skin and delighting in it. But that's just receiving pleasure. The other aspect of sensuality is the self-expression that that is both uninhibited and free. And by uninhibited is free from all those preconceptions and spontaneous, meaning that you are acting in a way that is without preparation and without hesitation. That is spontaneous sensual expression. Like, you're not thinking, I'm gonna move like this because it's sexy. No, you're sensing the experience of pleasure and expressing it on about, like just as it comes. And here we can understand how actually sensual pleasure is our life force brimming, and it's not even exclusive to sexuality nor even adulthood, not even humans. Like, we see panthers in the wild moving and hunting and or sleeping, like hanging their legs in the branch, and they are sensual. And what we experience and recognize as essential is the brimming of life force, of aliveness, of vitality. So I want to make a distinction between sensuality and sexuality. So sensuality is, to me, the experience of pleasure, and sexuality is a clear set of both behaviors and marker and physiological markers, like sex, coitus, like the intercourse is quite clear, and even if it's not connected to reproduction, it's genital in nature. And also we can see a change in the heart rate, a change in brain chemistry, a change in the tissues of the body, and all those wonderful, wonderful, wonderful things of sex. But though sex should be a pleasurable act, it often isn't, especially for women. In Mexico, there's the brutal statistic that 70% of Mexican women have never experienced an orgasm. And I have made the polls between my lady friends and even my clients from years of teaching Pilates and being a master Pilates teacher trainer. Most of my friends, because we are like more protected and more respected culturally because of our family, and we're lucky, we still cannot say that every sexual intercourse have been pleasurable and least orgasmic. So I make this distinction because it also has to do with culture. And for most men, climax and pleasure and orgasm, it's physiologically tied to sex, but not for women. For women. So I make this distinction because I believe that it's very important that intimacy and sexuality become an area of relation that is completely equal, because women can have the same pleasure like men and should, and it's in our bodies, but it doesn't come as easy. So that's why the practice of welcoming pleasure and living a sensual lifestyle, that like at the side of sexuality, like practicing pleasure and delighting in the apple and microdosing pleasure and like feeling all snug and cozy in the sofa with a blanket and talking with your friends and like feeling good at a fleshly sensation level sets a very important ground for women to actually have a sensual sexuality. So we are already like in the mood, in the sensitivity, in the openness, in the context of safety. So when the intimate encounter happens, it's an arena of equality, like you and your beloved climax, or like have the most of it. And having said that, um, I want also to point out that sensuality is singular. Like every person has its unique way to delight, because pleasure, the experience of pleasure is as unique as your DNA and your fingerprints. And that's why it can be so derailing to look for role models and to try to comply and fall into stereotypes. Like the typical stereotype of sensuality is, I'm gonna put in the super high heels and wear the corset and the sexy lingerie and the nails, and maybe I will get some lip filling and some buttocks lifting and everything. But the thing is, like, are you in those clothes? Like, are you in that body in the experience? Like, all of this adornment is working out for you, or is actually derailing you from sensing yourself? So I believe the high heels, like Marilyn Monroe said, like the quote is, I don't know who invented high heels, but we women owe him a lot. Him to the guy that invented high heels. And there's something about high heels that narrow the base of support, so you need to swing the hips a little bit more, and the natural patterns of the gait walking um, connects, like demands a deeper connection of the core muscles that are the same muscles that have to do with whole body orgasms. Like if you are watching the podcast here in video, you will see that I have a skeleton with a pink something. That is the psoas muscle of whole body orgasms. And that muscle is like, you connect with that sensation very clearly wearing high heels. But if you don't connect to that sensation, then you, which is quite difficult, most chances are that you're gonna drop your weight in the low back and the knees and end up with knee and low back pain. So there's a very thin line between compliance to stereotypes and being inspired by the pleasure in other people. Say Monica Vitti or Sofia Loren or
Yeah.
Madonna, like women that are
And
so in the body, yeah, that they,
also, and I
yeah,
think also that it's like bringing it back to the pleasure and finding your way back to you. It's really finding individually each person. Is it dressing in high heels, or is it wearing a tracksuit, or is it, even if it is getting the like beauty treatments, like whatever it is. I love my beauty treatments, but like whatever is bringing you pleasure. I think when we're in that numb state, then for sure we fall into the stereotypes, and then you're just doing things maybe you think are, the way like everyone thinks, or when you think of self-care, people think of baths, bubble baths, which I love. But like I've met so many people who are like, who tell me they don't like hiking, they don't like being out in nature, they don't like baths, and they're like, so what am I supposed to do? And I'm like, that's so funny, because I always talk about baths and hiking because I genuinely love those things. But you find what arouses you, like my client that said finances and stocks, they're like turning her on. So like, what is it that arouses you, and then and getting to know that, and you might notice this subtle like guilt or shame that comes up, and just holding space for yourself there. But I also wanted to chime in on the sensuality that you're talking about, because this is really interesting, because when we talk about people who have like mind body syndrome and a nervous system that's maybe like overstimulated or in fight or flight a lot, often physically and behaviorally we're rigid and controlling, and I was so rigid. Like I mean I'm always I'm by no means like all enlightened and cured and healed of everything, right? I'm just like peeling back the layers and peeling back the layers on the control and the rigidness. So I always celebrate myself when I find myself being not so controlling and not so rigid. And that is like how you're describing this sensuality, this spontaneity, because I was so full of fear. I was constantly second guessing myself. I was constantly scared. Will I say the right thing? Gotta say the right thing. Gotta say the right thing. Scared if I don't say the right thing. Gotta do the right thing. Gotta be a good person. And there was so much pressure on me within my internal world that there was no room for sensuality or spontaneity or knowing myself, because I was like terrified, just on autopilot going with this. So I'll tell you at one example. I still am extremely punctual, which is like, I'm working on. But I was in France with a friend of mine who is also has this same. She was like, I've never missed a I was like, I've never missed a flight, I've never missed a train, I've never, I'm always like freakishly early. And we got the train to Italy, and the two of us were sitting there waiting for our train back to France from Italy, and we were drinking a beer, and we were chatting, and she said, oh my God, looked at the time. We missed our train. And we both stood up and high-fived each other. We were like, we missed a train. Woo, we're so relaxed. Check us out. Like, so I celebrate these things in myself when I start to see myself relaxing a little bit into this sensuality or acting from this place. So I just love how you were describing it. I describe it as like expansive, like there's flexibility, sensuality, expansiveness. There's more room for flow, and there's more room for opportunity, grasping opportunities. And the other one is rigid, fearful, scarce, like, and you're in a state of control, and that is a numb place to be also. So
Yes.
I love everything you're sharing. Thank you.
Yeah. Pleasure is indeed a way back to the self. Like if we numb ourselves like as a means for survival, if we have had to brace ourselves and we have chronic tension, like pleasure is a way to melt through all those layers to your true self. But something very important is to be very careful of sensuality not becoming another goal or another duty or another homework or another task. So for this, it's very important to recognize pleasure as your true nature. Like you are already essential. You don't have to be like, I don't know who's trending, but I'm gonna say Britney Spears or Sophia Loren or whatever. Like you are alive, and to a certain degree, if you're still alive, there's some health in you, and that is your life force brimming. So I want to invite your audience to do a very simple sensual practice that is just asking one question that has three possible answers. And the question is, what am I sensing? What pleasure am I sensing? And there are three possible answers. Like, am I sensing pleasure? Can either be yes, I'm sensing pleasure now, for example. Where am I sensing pleasure? In my neck, because all this fluffy leopard coat is like caressing my neck. So I yes, I feel pleasure in my neck. But another answer can be no. I am not feeling pleasure at all. And very interestingly, the third answer is I don't know. I don't know if I'm sensing pleasure. So it can be yes, no, or who knows. And none of these answers really matters. What matters is the practice of sensing what you're sensing, which is sensuality. So if you're not sensing pleasure, you already won because you already sense that you don't sense. Or if you don't know, then that's the answer. Like, I don't know, but I am doing the connection. And what is fascinating is that the answers varies from moment to moment. And if you make the practice of listening to yourself, your body is gonna begin to talk. Your true self, your soma, it's gonna begin to express. And then you can elaborate like, okay, yeah, I'm feeling pleasure on my neck, but wow, I also feel the coat like brushing softly in my hands. And mm, I have a little swamp of pond of saliva beneath my tongue, which is pleasurable. And oh wow, the eyelids, those are so soft. And the voice of Ife, it's delightful to you have a beautiful voice, Ife. So I delight listening to your voice. So then we begin to microdose ourselves with with pleasure,
Uh,
and then uh you become a sensualist. You become like pleasure driven, and you make it part of your lifestyle.
and I can just say that this process is actually how I began to discover my boundaries, what, how to say yes and no. Like women, we're so like, how can we be giving consent when we don't even know? We're not even in our yes or our no. Like I was just on auto drive going around doing all these things. And when I start to use this process that you're so brilliantly sharing, then I start to like, oh my, like I start get these big no's. Like I don't want to do like I'm not available to be doing all this work at this time in the day. I need this time to do something else. And just having all these difficult conversations that had to come out of me, but it was simply through just this very simple method of getting to know, because like you said, the body knows. And often I still like I really conflict, for me is like very quite dysregulating. So I do put things off as long as I can, but eventually, because I am living this life of listening to my body and my journeying back to myself, um, it will come out of me. It will come out of me. It just will. Sometimes even when I try hold it back, it doesn't matter. It's coming out if I have a very strong yes or a very strong no. It's happening now. Whereas in the past, it was also numbed out and controlled. There were so many parts of me just keeping everything in check to a certain degree. And no wonder I was sick and I was tired and I was depressed and I was so numb that I tell people all the time, when I was like really suicidal and really, really down and I'm really sick, you could have put like a puppy and a baby and like Ashton Kutcher, whoever my like heartthrob is, all these things you could have put in front of me, but I couldn't feel anything. I was so numb. So I literally just microdosed my way back to me and feeling my yes, my no's. And it's just such a simple, beautiful way to get out of your head and into your body and to journey back to you. When you think of psychology and, it can get very complicated and our traumas and the past and everything everyone did to us that we're trying to repair, and like it can got very heavy and very serious, and for me it got too heavy and too serious and I wasn't feeling any better. But this did work for me, what we're sharing here today, this journeying back to myself. And I still really, really hold this practice that you're sharing so sacred and so important in my journey, because I am always, for the rest of my life, as long as I live, I will be journeying back to me. And and discovering what I delight in and what I am not okay with, and how can I use that to spread joy, to bring healing, to also create new solutions, right? In the world we live in today, we need lots of very new, innovative, creative solutions to get ourselves out of the mess we're in. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah, definitely. And you pointed out that something so important that it's definitely tied to gender and to patriarchal culture, that we women are not even asked for consent. Like our yes is a given, it's a default. Like I remember one time my father told uh, a worker that Candia is gonna wash the dishes. And I was so offended, like, fucking motherfucker, like, you are assuming that by me listening that you communicate to the worker that you believe that I'm gonna wash the dishes, now I do have to wash the dishes and comply. Whereas you didn't ask for me, I never offer it, and definitely my answer is no. So I got so offended that I packed. I was visiting him. I packed my things, went to the bus station, and went away back to my mom's house. And like then he was the offended one, and whatever. But it's very like like in our defense as hypersensitive women, there's a reason why we numbed ourselves and why we still have to deal with bracing, because all the micro abuse piled up, and not even from men, also from women. Like I've gone to visit my high school friends when to do homeworks, and the mother would serve the plate first of the husband and to the brothers, and at the end to my friend and me, because we were women. So that's like, what the fuck? Like, I mean, if the table, we are at the other corner of the table, then it's understandable. But no, like our lack of consent still is a given. And that's something we have to stand against. And the way we do that is not violently, nor taking the consent away from guys, for example, but actually by taking back our agency and taking ownership of ourself, because I believe that consent is like I believe that our soul is defined by the word no. Like where I begin and where I end is where my no lays. Like you cannot, you shall not pass, like Gandalf said to the demon in the Lord of the Rings. And something that goes even deeper to this, like now we are pretty much safe, independent, happy podcaster women, but and we may not have to in a great scale like fight against this, but we do have to act on our own programming. And you mentioned something so important, that is saying no to overworking or to running on a task that you really don't feel like it. Like boundaries start with oneself. Like the muscle of saying no begins with saying no to yourself, but not by saying no to your pleasure, because we're very good to
Exactly.
to
Completely.
say,
Too good at
yeah,
that.
like no, I don't give myself permission to take a bath, nor to
Mm,
send like this email to the next. No, 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 that's the trap.
totally.
Actually, we need to say no to the judging part in us, that gets in the way of delighting.
Uh,
And
This
yeah, like,
and that's all a very, very, very key part to healing the body. Totally. We're coming up to time here, and I am absolutely just so grateful for having you here, Candia. And I love this exercise that you've given everyone to try with the three. Ask yourself the question, does this feel, what were the questions? Repeat them for me, actually.
yeah, like it can be any question about your life, but in short,
The-
is am I feeling pleasure? Am I sensing pleasure? Can
mm,
be three answers: yes, no, I don't know.
yeah,
And the thing here is that only yes means yes, and you can ask yourself, uh, am I sensing pleasure about meeting with my aunties, like the sisters of my grandmother in Christmas, uh, or no, or I don't know. Then the very important. Or I have I matched with this super hot guy on Bumble, or that invite me out, or my fiance wants us to go for dinner. Then you ask yourself, am I sensing pleasure for this? It can be yes, no, or I don't know. And you have to listen to the first answer. It pops from the back of your head. It's a yes, it's a no, it's an I don't know. And if you don't know, that means no for now.
no for
So
now. No for
no
now. I
for
love that. You don't
no.
have to know. Yeah, you don't have to know. You will
You don't
know
have to. If you don't know, it's a no today
for now.
or now
I
or late.
love
Like
that. I love
if I
that
don't know
so
if I
much.
want to go with the neighbor or whatever, it's like, I don't know. Well, then it's a no. Maybe I ask myself tomorrow, and I will know.
I love
So
it.
so trust your yes and trust your no. That's your soul speaking at the, in a fleshly way through pleasure.
I love it so much. And so Candia is the host of the Sensual Sessions podcast, and I'll leave all of her contacts and her links in the description. In case anyone's wondering why my face is so red, I did have a facial today. I didn't realize until I got on the call, but I'm all good. I'm safe. Tomorrow I'm going to be looking very, very hot and beautiful, but for now, I'm a little red. And is there anything, any other like offerings that you want to let anybody know about today, that you can let us know?
Yeah, I'd like to invite everyone to go grab the free guide to awaken sensuality. That is about 3 steps. Very easy: posture, presence, and pleasure. They all start with P. So if you want to awaken sensuality, it's as simple as embodying your posture, your presence, and your pleasure. And to know more, go to my website. If is gonna add it on the description, and if you're just listening, it's www.centrodpoder.com, meaning www.centrodepoder.com. Thank you so much, Aoife. Such a pleasure to be here.
Yes, I'll leave all those details in the description and the link to your three Ps.
Yes.
And we will hang out again. We'll talk again. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Candia.
Thank you.
Hasta luego.
Hasta luego.